The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are only those of the speaker and do not represent the views and opinions of any other than them who said them. Welcome to episode 2 of 1H. 1H is a platform intended to help people share their thoughts and ideas regarding decentralized education, leadership, technology, and analysis. 1H is hosted on the Gridcoin Discord server every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. UTC, and everyone is welcome to join in the conversation through the Discord chat. 1H episodes will be no longer than 75 minutes, though they may be shorter depending on how many speakers and subjects are scheduled for the episode. For now, each episode is broken into 4 15-minute blocks, which can be reserved by individuals or groups who wish to explore a subject. To reserve a block, reach out to jringo in the Gridcoin Discord server or in the Gridcoin Slack with the subject you wish to discuss and the participants who intend to speak. To qualify for a time slot, you or a participant must have written and published something at least somewhat covering what you intend to speak about. There are 3 rules when it comes to broadcasting on 1H. You can talk about a project, but only if you're using it as an example to illustrate the idea behind the project. The focus of any subject should somehow be related to decentralized education, leadership, technology, or analysis. Swearing and vulgarity is not permitted. And last but not least, 1H is meant to evolve as a community project. Suggestions and ideas are always welcome. So, the fire is lit, the hearth is warm, let's get underway. Today, we have only one subject, but it's sure to be a doozy: value in the blockchain ecosystem. So today we're going to talk about value and how it translates into blockchains and all these cryptocurrencies that are floating around. And this block's going to be formatted in just a sort of open way. I'm going to introduce the concept for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're just hopefully going to have a nice conversation afterwards. And the way I'd like to start is just exploring what value is and how we use it in society every day. So the way I see it, there are 2 types of value. There's the tangible and the intangible. And since we're all here on Discord, I think some good examples would be the computer and the internet. So a computer would be the example of a tangible source of value. You have the resources in it, you have the things it can physically do, and that's basically it. It's given a monetary value based on those 2 things. The better the hardware, the more valuable the computer. The more expensive the resources were while creating the hardware, the more expensive that hardware is going to be. And we attribute value to that hardware based on what it can do. So the value of a video card from 5 years ago is a little less than the value of a video card released yesterday, mainly because they can do more today than they could 5 years ago. And then the internet is this intangible source of value that we're using right now. You're using it to listen to this podcast. We're using it to create the podcast. It's not this physical thing that you go out and buy. It's this thing that provides a utility. It lets us do things that we could not otherwise do without it. And we give value to these intangible sources of value based on what they let us do and how well they let us do it. So for example, AOL, which is a way to use the internet, was a way to use the internet, probably has less value today than something like Discord, which is used regularly and for many things. Now, these sources of value are given monetary substance. So we use this currency to exchange these objects of value. To buy a computer, you use money. To buy the internet, to use the internet, you spend money. And when we're talking about money, there are a couple theories to it. There's the commodity theory, which is this dollar bill that I might be holding right now represents a set amount of a physical resource that I can exchange the dollar for. So in the US, we used to use a gold-based economy where you could actually go in and exchange a dollar for a weight of gold. That didn't necessarily work for a variety of reasons, mainly because we grew as an economy to the point where we just couldn't physically exchange the dollars for gold. So after commodity, we created this thing called the Fiat System. And the Fiat System is essentially a currency backed by an arbitrary set of laws, which is the definition of fiat. So what it turns into is this value based on the network which enforces these laws. So the US dollar is backed by this arbitrary set of laws which is enforced by the US government. So when you say that this dollar has value, what you're saying is you believe in the network of the US government and that they will back the value of that dollar. It's a very, very surface way of explaining it, but for our intents and purposes, it gets the point across. To tie that straight into cryptocurrency, there is this guy, Nick Gogarty, who developed this coin with the help of others called Solar Coin. And it uses this idea of a network to create value for its cryptocurrency called Solar Coin. What Solar Coin does is it has a set amount of Solar Coins, the cryptocurrency minted, and it rewards them to people who produce kilowatt hours with solar panels. So there's a couple ways to look at that. You're saying that when you buy something with Solar Coin, or when you say Solar Coin has value, you're saying that that network of the people who participate in the Solar Coin blockchain and cryptocurrency is something that you believe in. It's something that you think will exist in the future, and it's something that whose source of value is something that you believe in. So the idea of taking the sun and converting its energy into essentially a currency is something that you believe in. At the same time, you're also giving value to that physical process of converting the sun into usable energy. So you're saying it's backed by solar panels and all the engineering that goes into that entire process. So that's sort of a combination of the intangible and the tangible there. The intangible is the network behind the Solar Coin production, and the tangible is the physical hardware that creates the usable energy. So when you bring that back into Bitcoin, which was the first blockchain, and you look at what Bitcoin does, Bitcoin is this transaction blockchain. A blockchain is a set of information, right? So what Bitcoin has in its blockchain is just transaction data. So you're saying the idea of transacting, of exchanging financial information is something of value and is something you believe in. There's no physicality to it. You just believe in that network. The only physicality I can think about, and please challenge this thought when we get to it if you think something different, but the only physicality I can think of is the hashing algorithm that goes on. What you're doing is physically solving cryptographic hashes. So Bitcoin could be said to be backed by that transaction belief, the idea that transacting financial data has value, and the idea that physically solving code, cryptographic hashes, is valuable. Personally, I like it. I love Bitcoin. I love what it is. But I don't really see the physicality in the value of the physicality of cryptographic hashing just for the purpose of advancing the blockchain. It has a huge amount of value when it first came out because it was the first implementation of a blockchain. It was the first way to do this digital cash system. And that was amazing. It still is amazing. It's still very young. So when you think about bringing physicality into the intangibility aspect of a blockchain, which is that network, I'd like to approach it with the following statement. Any contemporary blockchain holds value with relation to three major sources. Exchange, the ability to rapidly and inexpensively exchange information through a decentralized and immutable mechanism. Two, it would be the information, which is the information in that blockchain. So again, in blockchain or in Bitcoin, it's the transaction data, the fact that person A has this money, person B has this money, and this other amount of money was exchanged between them. And then this third aspect is what Satoshi called an incentive structure. And it's the idea that you can mint a currency based on solving these cryptographic hashes. It's a reward for doing the work required by the blockchain. So it's the generation and distribution mechanisms of the blockchain's currency. And there are a few communities who have really taken that last aspect, the incentive structure, and brought it away from cryptographic hashing of the blockchain mechanism and into a more physical realm. The three that I personally like the most are Gridcoin, which I am part of, CureCoin, and Foldingcoin. So what they have done is they combine point 2 and 3. So they combine the information of the blockchain with the minting of the currency. The first value proposition is still there. The idea that you can exchange information between two nodes quickly, inexpensively, and immutably. So what all three of these communities do is they mint the currency based on instead of solving cryptographic hashes, on solving real world tasks. So Gridcoin, which I can speak on the most, uses a software called Boink, which was developed in 2002 to 2004. And what Boink does is it allows users to create what's called a project, and they load data sets into that project, and then they let volunteers come on and crunch those data sets and return the results to the person who made the project. So some examples of this are to SolarCoin. One of the projects found a molecular combination that increased the efficiency of solar panels by some crazy number for efficiency. It was like 20 some odd percent. They've done patient-specific cancers. They do. One of them works to crack the Enigma codes, the remaining Enigma messages from World War II. And I mean, it's just historical value, but it's still fascinating. It's something. History is value, so it has value there. And they use this. They use a user's processing power to solve these projects, and then based on how much processing power they contribute to these projects, they are given a currency which is minted by the blockchain. And the blockchain is secured by the proof of stake mechanism, which just doesn't use aimless hashing to secure itself. It uses some other mechanisms that we will maybe get into today, probably at another podcast. So Curecoin and Foldingcoin do a very similar thing. They mint a currency, and they distribute it based on the processing power a user contributes to folding proteins in particular. So they're doing medical work. The things you can do with folding proteins is just, it's science. You know, you're doing things that existed before the blockchain, but didn't have a value attributed to them, a currency attributed to them. So what the blockchain allowed people to do is give these tasks that already existed a currency on which they could operate. So on top of the currency, they use the information aspect of blockchains to add even more value. It's less developed as the currency aspect of it, but you could, for example, have a block that has information on peer-reviewed articles, on scientific results, on really anything you want. You can put whatever you want into these blocks. It doesn't have to be transaction data. So the value isn't tied to that first iteration of the blockchain, which was just transaction data. You can really put anything in it, including SolarCoin, which puts in the production of solar energy. So the amount of solar energy we produce as a society is put into the blockchain, and that could be said to give value to a solar coin. That is an open ledger that can never be changed and never, it just exists. And you can look back through history and see what we did as a society over time. Now, when it comes to science, you can have these results in the blockchain, and what you can do with having scientific results in a blockchain is pretty astounding from my eyes. You can set it up so you can scrape the blockchain for information, and you can automatically find scientific projects that use, for example, the same molecular combination, but maybe one of the projects was a chemistry project and the other one was a biology project. Normally, those two would never really touch without a lot of work going through a lot of journals to find them. With a blockchain, you can just put in CO2, and you will have all these articles that are stored in the blockchain that relate to CO2. And think of the things you can do with that. It just makes science easier, and the compounding aspect of having more and more results put into the blockchain and more information that just expands. It blows my mind. I can't even phrase it right. So the main things I think we should be talking about today is where that value comes from, how that equates to a currency, and how that currency is represented by these three blockchains. And that's really all I have to introduce the subject today. We have quite a few people here, so we can hopefully have a little discussion going and really just kind of break down what we all think gives value to these cryptocurrencies, because it is all we're talking about today is theory, because it's a very new space and it's rather difficult to define. So it's hopefully we can just get something going. So Openwords, you said you have a couple questions. If you want to ask them, go for it.
It's clear that value is created from these research coins, but it's not clear to me exactly how that turns into value in the currency associated with them. So to give an example, with the US dollar, it is not just fiat, for example, solely fiat that gives the dollar some value. Some demand, someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some demand there are places where demand for the dollar is created. So for example, the petrodollar is an example of that. I suppose it is by fiat, but a number of nations allied with the United States demand that if you want oil, you pay for the oil in US dollars, and that mechanism creates demand for dollars. And so I suppose there are other fiat currencies that don't have that mechanism for creating demand, but it brings up this question that I have, which is, how is demand created for the currency?
I think supply and demand of a currency is a pretty interesting topic. For example, back in the day, right? The U.S. dollar was this currency that other nations pegged to, so they created artificial demand for it. So the supply and demand aspect of currency, to me, is it's not the primary source of value. But at the same time, you are right. So what a lot of these cryptocurrencies do is they're deflationary currencies. So Bitcoin, for example, has has claimed by protocol that a certain number of Bitcoins will always be created. So it creates this scarcity, and that scarcity is a little artificial. And there are arguments on both sides that say, one of them says deflationary currencies are bad and self-defeating because of that. And other ones say that inflationary currencies are self-defeating because you can't control the rate of inflation. So there are two approaches to it in cryptocurrency. The first one is what I described with Bitcoin with the deflationary. The second one is taking inflationary concepts and putting them into a set of computer code, which is another source of intangible value. Computer code just does stuff. It's not really a product. But when you define inflation in a protocol that is especially open source, which is a huge aspect of a lot of these cryptocurrencies, then anyone can look at it and say, I know what the inflation rate is going to be. I know what interest rates are going to be. I know all this stuff that would be otherwise unknowable in the current fiat system, where inflation rate is controlled by markets and interest rates are released at a whim by a central organization. So there are a couple ways that I see that cryptocurrencies use supply and demand. But ultimately, I think we're switching away from using supply and demand in currency. I think supply and demand is more of a resource, a tangible value sort of tool, because when you have a resource, you have actual limitations to how much resource you have. So there is literal scarcity. When you have a currency that's just minted, there is no such thing as scarcity. You can mint more, or you can mint fewer. It's a weird concept for me, but that is the best way I can answer that. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Well, it definitely makes sense to me that the knowability of cryptocurrency systems is something that would impart some value to the whole system. That makes a lot of sense to me. So I think that does answer part of my question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm not an expert on this stuff. This is just things I think about, and that's the best way I can phrase it.
Well, it's important question to me because if you don't mind me talking about my group, my group is thinking about accepting payment for our services in crypto, and possibly what would be even better is in some of these science coins. And so where the value is, how the coins are imbued with value is really important to me.
Yeah, Pooktwo, go ahead and talk about that if you want.
Okay, so that is actually one of the challenges that Foldingcoin is actually facing. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Robert. I am with the Foldingcoin group. Is a lot of these coins after Bitcoin have been trying to find uses for their coins itself. Currently, right now, in my opinion, Bitcoin is more or less the only one of these cryptocurrencies that actually has any real-world value. And its real-world value really comes from it solving the Byzantine general problem. Other than that, a lot of these other coins are just really experimental and just trying new things out. You know, Foldingcoin was started as just a fun way for people to use their old Bitcoin mining GPUs that can no longer mine Bitcoins just to earn these folding coins. At the beginning, we didn't really have a game plan on what they could be used for. But now that crypto is taking off and a lot of these projects are starting getting noticed, such as Foldingcoin, CureCoin, Gridcoin, I think it is up to us to find a use for them. You know, having you and your organizations accepting them is a step in the right direction. And that's what one of our main focuses needs to be on. Because at this point, in my opinion, I think a lot of these coins are speculation value only. Because, you know, I can't go out there and say that Foldingcoin can be used in a lot of places because it can't. You know, right now, the only place to really use your Foldingcoin is on an exchange. So let me ask you this, Openwords. What are your organizations and why are you thinking of accepting these science coins?
Okay, let me try to answer that as quickly as I can. So my organization that I represent is Openwords. Openwords is an open source language learning web application. That's what we are. We basically want to open up language learning for universities and other organizations so that they control the content. Hashtag OER, Open Educational Resources, we're part of that movement. And okay, so why are we thinking about accepting cryptocurrency? Well, part of the answer is because the large answer is that finding financing in general has been, US dollars has been difficult. And so that just makes you think about financing in general, and it makes you think about alternatives. But more specifically, some of our potential clients, which would be universities, they, in the United States, many of the departments are getting underfunded, but they have computing resources. And so many of our clients are interested in science, at least their broader institution, and they have computing power. And we could accept, they could deliver that computing power to us. And while we don't need any computing done for us, if there are exchanges and we can exchange the tokens that they generate, and we could use that to pay our people, then that just seems to make sense. The only question that I have is how much value is generated for a certain amount of computing power, and given the parameters, is it realistic? I mean, it certainly would be possible qualitatively. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that's actually a perfect segue into my next section. And that's what you're doing right there is exactly what I think a lot of people in this space are doing, is they're accepting cryptocurrency because cryptocurrency does have the unique value that you can accept it from anybody really easily without a lot of overhead. Every time Wikipedia does that thing where it's like, hey, please donate $20, I usually give them $20 in Bitcoin just because it's easy for me. I don't have to sign up for PayPal. I don't have to give them my bank information. It's just really easy to send it from my phone. So you accepting multiple cryptocurrencies, especially science ones, which I think are, really good for the world overall, CureCoin, Gridcoin, Foldingcoin, I think we're doing really good work in this space. I think that's really great. But there's still the one problem which is one of our main focuses this year of 2018 for Foldingcoin, is you're still accepting these and you're still just exchanging them for Bitcoin, which you effectively will most likely exchange for US dollar to keep your operations running. And that's something that we want to try and solve right there, because the problem right there is that doesn't really give Foldingcoin value if you're just going to exchange it on an exchange. Foldingcoin needs to be used for something in a real world setting. Going back to what Ringo was saying at the beginning, to where, computers have value because they do X, Y, and Z. Bitcoin has value because it does X, Y, and Z. That's the challenge of a lot of these altcoins, is we need to find real world use cases for our coins. There's tons of ideas we've had in the Foldingcoin community, and, we're really going to zero in and, really assess what we can go after in the marketplace that would make most sense for Foldingcoin. A lot of ideas in our community have been around, like, being a gaming currency, somehow allowing games to use Foldingcoin inside their games. That's obviously shooting for the stars, looking for a really cool case for Foldingcoin to be used in like Steam games or something. But we do need to find something like that. So that way people like your organization are not just accepting it to exchange it to Bitcoin. You may actually be able to hold on to it and use it for something else, or at least when you're exchanging it for value to somebody else, they're buying it for a reason other than just trading it to Bitcoin. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense, and it was exactly what I was wondering about when I realized that Gridcoin had value. And I should say that it's not just the ease of exchange, but also just the fact that our particular clients would be particularly interested in your particular kind of currency. So I should just add that again. I have a question. So I wonder if you guys have thought about, a regular stream of why not? What if you could work Gridcoin into grants? So I guess you want to deliver the computing power for free, and the idea is that the computing power is some of the spare computing time being used for scientific calculations. But I would think that a lot of the organizations using your service have grants from their governments, and you might. I'm just asking as an outsider.
Yeah. So you touched on a bunch of really good things, and what you said about your clients being particularly interested in the services we provide, it sounds like you're saying there is that you're attributing value to this computing power instead of just attributing it arbitrarily to whatever. So that is the thing of value. This what we call in Gridcoin IPP, or idle processing potential. We actually talked about it a little bit in episode 0. And this is a thing. It's a resource. The processing power that's not used by computers. It's the idea of what's your computer doing when you're asleep. That's a resource that we have as a society that we can use, and it's a resource of value. So when you direct that at something that other people think are valuable, that other people think that resource is valuable, that becomes a network, and that network gives more value to the generation of the currency in itself. And then you're talking about, both of you were talking about use cases, essentially. So in the crypto world, there are a couple of use cases. They're called tokens. They're not so much used by blockchains. They're used primarily on Ethereum right now. There are a couple other platforms. I think Foldingcoin uses one counterparty. EOS is one that's coming out. And for Ethereum, to use Ethereum as an example, Ethereum developed a smart contract a platform. So it took the use case of a contract, which is a thing that does stuff for people, and it automated it. It put it in a protocol. An open source protocol, again, is a very valuable thing. And what people are doing with the ability to make a contract in a set of code is developing a bunch of other use cases for these tokens. So for example, in Gridcoin, it's not just a currency that's tied to this resource IPP. It's a currency that you can use. You can't buy your loaf of bread with it yet. I think that exchange the exchange value proposition for all the cryptocurrencies will come eventually. They're developing protocols that let you exchange any currency for any currency, and eventually more stores will accept currency. Like what's the big one that took it in 2014? Overstock. And then so you can't. That's not the only thing you can do with Gridcoin. You can also use it to vote on the further development of the Gridcoin platform. And there are ways to that other tokens on smart contracts use their token. So some of the CryptoKitties, you can use your token to make a cute little cat. You can in Bazaar, you can use tokens to make entire sub ecosystems within the larger ecosystem that do very unique things. There's this one called Mana. Who knows if it's ever going to become an actual product, but the idea is you can use Mana to buy real estate in a virtual reality world. So there are these use cases, and then to tie that into grants, this is actually something we've been exploring pretty recently in the Gridcoin ecosystem, which is developing this thing called a Gridcoin grant system. Because you're right, a lot of grants, I think we talked about this actually last week or 2 weeks ago, but a lot of grants are funded by governments. Yeah, we did talk about it in the open source section, the first block of the episode 2 weeks ago. Grants are essentially governments taking tax money and giving it to universities or university researchers. And it's part of a social contract that says we, the society, give you, the researcher, money, and you give us your information or the data you discover back. And by doing that, you increase the standard of living for everyone. So the process of getting these grants has evolved over time. It's become a little more difficult, and it's become a little more focused on IP research or translational research, where you're trying to create a product instead of just trying to discover stuff. So what a lot of researchers want to do is, Openwords says a lot more difficult. And so what a lot of researchers are like to do is called basic research, where you just they did this with the sickleback fish, and they just said, this fish is weird, I'm going to look at this fish and figure out why it's so weird. And they looked at it, and they found what they were trying to look for, but at the same time they discovered modern genetics. Like they weren't out there to create a product they can sell on a marketplace. They were out there to discover stuff. And by discovering stuff, they created brand new marketplaces instead of just a product to sell on a pre-existing marketplace. So one thing we can do with blockchain, when I was talking earlier about putting information on the blockchain, is you can make, I don't know if our listeners are familiar, there's this thing called an impact factor that is used to rate scientific journals. And when you're publishing an article, you look at the IF of a journal it basically combines how many people cite the journal and all this other great information. You can look it up if you are very interested, and you can put that on a blockchain. So IF is run by a central authority, essentially. And if you take that central authority, that middleman, which is the primary purpose of a blockchain, taking out the middleman, if you take that out, you can make a reputation system, and you can make a token or a coin even that is rewarded to people who do good research, who pass the peer review process. And let's say I get 5 articles passed through the peer review process. I get a set number of these tokens, and now I am able to essentially vouch for other researchers. And by vouching for them, they are given funding, which is minted by the blockchain. So let's say someone gets 10 reputation points, they are given a set number of currency based on a protocol. Again, this is all based on protocol. There's no people involved. The only people involved are writing the protocol. So the protocol then gives that person a set number of Gridcoin to fund their research. Then someone has 5 reputation points. They get a set number. And this is just kind of off the cuff, but you develop these protocols that allow funding for research. And the way we're starting it in Gridcoin is through funding of BOINC projects, because BOINC projects require a server to host the data. So it's not that expensive, but it would be an interesting way to test the system. So that is sort of an exploration of how maybe these blockchains will evolve to develop more use cases for their currencies and tokens, because it's possible to mint more than one currency or token with the same blockchain. And it's even possible to make a token that cannot be exchanged. So if you can't exchange a token, it makes it so you can't sell the token. And if you can't sell it, you can't buy it. And if you can't buy it, you can't buy into the system. So you're given this reputation that can never be changed. So that's how I would respond to your grant idea. Pooktwo says he has something to talk about on it. Go for it.
Yeah, I think that's great, and that's one of the values that we've actually introduced to our platform too. Going along towards the end when you said you can create multiple tokens on these platforms, we actually had running in 2016 and 2017 something that we call the merge folding platform. Since we're built on counterparty, effectively any counterparty token can be distributed on our platform using our same exact usernames. So many people might be familiar with the Spells of Genesis project. They're basically a cryptocurrency trading card game. It's similar to the kitties thing on Ethereum, to where this token represents this cat. Spells of Genesis went the route of making a cryptocurrency trading card game. So they actually create tokens with individual names such as FD card, or I think you guys have a grid coin card. And basically each token that you own represents a different card. And they were able to do a promotional giveaway on our platform. Foldingcoin actually, the very first Spells of Genesis card was called FD card. It was the very first one ever distributed, and it was distributed on our platform. Basically, we got together with the Spells of Genesis guys, and they did a 2-month-long giveaway of giving away these FD cards. And during that 2 months where people were folding, they were able to earn this card, and they locked the asset so no more can be created. So the only people who hold these FD cards are people who folded in that time frame. Now, obviously, that was years ago, so people have traded them and sold them. But when they were first minted, they were only given to participants of folding. So when you're able to have these multiple tokens like you were suggesting, I think that adds a very unique value and incentivizes people to actually fold or to be boinkers more, because they can earn multiple tokens by doing the same thing. So unlike Foldingcoin, what I touched on earlier, the value of these cards are only useful in the game itself. So in the Spells of Genesis game, if you hold the FD card, you're able to use that card in the game itself. If you don't hold that token, you can't use that card. So in my opinion, Spells of Genesis has solved their problem of trying to find a value for trying to find a use case for their tokens. They do have a use case. They have a very clear use case for their tokens, and it's to be used in their trading card game. So it's really nice that these companies and these different organizations can distribute on our platform their different use case tokens. And going back to what I said before, I think at least Foldingcoin, we need to find that niche, whether it be what you were talking about with the voting rights or hashing documents within the blockchain. I think you touched base on. We need to find that, and I think it's important for a lot of these other altcoin projects out there to find that use case as well.
Yeah, I think Spells of Genesis is a great example.
Yeah, they're fantastic guys over there. Anybody have any questions about what I just said there?
That all made sense to me. That seems like one use case. You might also you could also ask for 5% of a grant, or encourage researchers to write when they write a grant. Encourage them to have 5% go to purchasing into the Gridcoin ecosystem, which would also create some demand for Gridcoin. Yeah.
The idea of it's definitely a possibility, but the idea of making someone buy into a system is particularly troubling in the crypto space right now because of the stigma around it of being this sort of greedy, cutthroat, hacker, scammer sort of realm. And when you so the difference I see is between price and value. You can raise the price through there are dozens and hundreds probably of economic tools you can implement that will raise the price of any coin. But price does not necessarily equate to value. So you can another way to do what you just said would be maybe you can earn the right to request grant funding by contributing to other projects or to contribute to Folding or Cure. And by doing that, after a certain amount of you earn these tokens, and once you earn those tokens, you eventually earn the level to the point where it's like, okay, this person is probably not here to scam the system. They're here. They've put their work in. They're done, paid their dues, so to speak, except without money. And at that point, the network, because again, this is all community, open source, decentralized protocols. The network is confident in giving them a set number of currency. And then the question comes to, do you mint this currency to give them, or do you have a treasury that gives them the money, or how does that whole distribution system work out? And all of this is so new. Again, we're having our 10th year anniversary of Bitcoin this year. So the advancements that have been made, particularly in these science coins in the past 10 years and less, because they came out mostly in 2013, 2014, is amazing. And when you look at like the .com bubble, which again is equated to the cryptocurrency, I'll call it a bull rush because I don't think it's a bubble, but that the internet comes out in early 80s and the bubble happens in the mid 90s, and then the true use cases of the internet happen after the bubble, so like 2000, 2001. So that was about 20 years to get the internet from just a bunch of universities, a few universities exchanging some information, to Amazon breaking $10 and actually providing a use case. So when we're talking about all this stuff, it's like, yes, we want to do this and we want to implement it. And it's very tempting to implement structures that raise the price but do nothing for the value. And I don't know necessarily where I'm going with this, but when we look into defining these things or building use cases, I think it's very important that we look at the true value. So in Gridcoin, we look at IPP as the source of value, the processing power which already exists in the world. There's no need for us to continue building GPUs. We have enough processing power. So to me, Bitcoin is less valuable because it encourages people to buy so many GPUs that NVIDIA runs out of stock or has to pump up a $100 GPU up to $500 because they're so scarce. It's artificial scarcity. We don't actually need all these resources. So if you build a system that focuses on that, the actual value builder, then you will raise the price, which benefits the entire network. It just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think that was really well said, Ringo. And we at Foldingcoin, we see the same thing, to where we are finding value in all of these, like you said, these GPUs that we really have enough of. And we're using them towards science and trying to find cures for cancer, Alzheimer's, and other viral diseases. And in at least the crypto space, I think our value is very high. All three of the projects, I think the value is extremely high, because you compare the science coins to many of these other altcoins, and a lot of these other altcoins are just, hashing algorithms that have been forked from this coin, which has been forked from that coin, and so forth and so forth. The science coins add a really unique value of using these GPUs towards something a little bit more effectively. And by a little bit more, I mean a lot of it more. All of it's going into these distributed computing platforms that have been running for years. I mean, I think Folding at Home has been running since October 2000. And I know SETI is on Blink, and I think that started in like 98. If I'm not mistaken, I think SETI was the first distributed computing platform, was it?
There were two before, Distributing Net, and there's one before Distributing Net, I think. But it was very early. Same people.
Okay. And it's really cool that these have been around so long. And, before cryptocurrency, these were really, in communities that were either, IT junkies or, medical researchers, people who had an active interest in the project themselves. What our coins are doing is they're bringing at least the crypto community, who has a massive amount of computational power, to be interested in these science projects that have been running for a lot longer than cryptocurrency has been around. And that in itself is value. And it's absolutely amazing in this space what we're doing.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. The like Boeing, for example, used to have that screensaver back when it was first coming out. Like I think 2003 or 4 is when they first put that out, and I remember that, and it was a fun thing. You know, you put it on your computer, and then you kind of forget about it in a little bit because a lot of people want to do this stuff, but they have no reason to. They see science as valuable. They see the stuff that we do as valuable, but there's no incentive to do it. And when you tie a currency to this thing that everyone sees as valuable, all of a sudden people will do it. Like it's the reason people go to work. They go to work to get paid for the most part. Some people are lucky enough to have jobs they love. But for the most part, you go to work because there's an incentive behind it. Your incentive is the cash, and you use the cash to live. So if you can tie this incentive structure, which was built into the first blockchain, which just the way that we're going to be able to play with systems of incentive and value with this open source protocol is just mind blowing to me. And the way we're doing it in particular is especially important because, again, everyone wants to do this. Everyone has someone in their family who is afflicted by a disease in particularly, and they want to cure it. A lot of people are fascinated by aliens and just discovering space and making solar panels efficient and doing all these great things. And when you give them incentive to do it, they'll do it. And then to what you said in the beginning about a lot of these altcoins, not really, they're just like forks of forks of forks of forks. Yes. And then there are a few, like Dogecoin, I think is a great example where they really take the network aspect of value and they blow everyone else out of the water. Dogecoin is one of the most amazing communities that has ever existed in the crypto space, in my humble opinion. But like the things they did as a network are going to make it that so that altcoin, even if they never direct their hashing power at something important, it will always have value. It's just something everyone can get behind, and that when you tie that feeling, that it's almost a cult feeling, but that network and community in with things of actual hashing power and use, it both they get just as good. They'll never beat Doge because Doge is amazing, but it ties the intangible and the tangible, and I look forward to seeing how it grows.
Oh, I look forward to it too. And you are correct. There's tons of great communities and great altcoins out there. I'm just generalizing because now I think last time I looked on crypto market cap, it's our coin market cap. It was like something like 4,000 coins now. I remember back in like 2014, it was like once a month a new one would come out and I'd research it all. Now I can't even keep up with it. It's like 3 come out a day. I mean, my, one of my friends just told me the other day about some coin that I had never even heard of, and it like literally had came out within the last like few days, and I'm just like, it's so hard to keep up with it now. And I know a lot of that is because, like you said earlier, a lot of people are viewing this space as, scammy and things like that. And, the core people in this space, that's just not true. I don't believe that at all. The people who have been around here for a long time and who believe in the technology, people I would assume that are in this podcast right now, and a lot of other people I've met throughout the years, we really deeply care about the technology involved here. And I know with all these new people coming in that they're making a lot of the same mistakes that many of us made back in 2013, where we're just so excited about it and we're just kind of looking at everything. And it's not necessarily, at least for me, it was in 2013, speaking of my own personal experience, I saw the value in Bitcoin and I didn't necessarily see the value in all the other altcoins. All I saw was, I can mine and earn X amount of money. And I think that's what a lot of the new people are coming in doing, not necessarily looking at what the project is trying to accomplish. And I think you're right, going back to your point earlier to where you said, I think that was a really good point with your .com bubble. When the .com bubble happened, it separated the good from the bad. A silver lining to the .com bubble was that, things like Amazon and Google did survive. And, obviously they had real working products out there. And I think you're 100% right that we will see that also with the crypto craze that's going on right now. And, that's why one of my main focuses now that I'm doing Foldingcoin full time is to really help bring Foldingcoin to separate and be on the good side of the .com bubble rather than the bad side.
Yeah, to have that use case. I think you're absolutely right. The ones with the use case will be the ones that survive. And it's not exactly like the .com bubble in my eyes, because the .com bubble was with stocks, and stocks aren't currency. all you can do with stocks is sell them for USD, which is essentially what you can do with crypto right now. But eventually, you will be able to use any cryptocurrency to buy anything. I can make a coin tomorrow, and it will be worth $0.000, but I'll be able to use a billion of them to buy a loaf of bread, for example. So there's still that network aspect that didn't exist in the dot-com bubble. But in the end, is the ones that truly stand out are going to be the ones like ours, like Solar Coin, like Spells of Genesis, like these coins that actually do things and use things of value that already exist, or produce other things of value that people see as value. Because all value is a bunch of people agreeing that this is valuable, and they'll be the ones that stand out and survive. I think you're absolutely right.
And that's where we have the difficulty tying that value to the token or the coin. As Openwords said to my statement that Gridcoin its intrinsic value is the data sets of research that it actually does. And as he says there, is it intrinsically tied to that value? And that's the difficulty that we have, is tying the actual coin to the value of what we do with what we are doing in order to get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. It's a lot easier. Like if you go to either some miners or some crypto enthusiasts and you say, hey, here's my science coin and our intrinsic value is, tying it to the Boink research or the folding out home research. A lot of crypto enthusiasts get it right off the bat, because they're used to, mining, hundreds of different coins all the time. And so they see, oh, these science coins, they're separated from the pack because they're doing something unique here. They're applying it towards science. The challenge is all the new people coming in and the people who don't necessarily care about the technology behind it.
Yeah, they're interested in the money they will make, but I think it changes. I mean,
oh, it will. You're right.
As you said, that's what we were like in the early days. I mean, I can remember setting up a Bitcoin wallet in the very early days of Bitcoin, and doing a bit of mining. I still have to find that wallet though.
Oh, good luck! Please find it. Good luck to you, sir.
No, it's on a hard drive from many years ago, and I'm still struggling to find it. I've got hard drives all over the place, but it's to me, if it's gone, it's gone. That's the way it goes. But it really our problem is getting. I mean, I can give you a direct example. I've been involved around cryptocurrency and Boink and etc. right since it all started, he used to see me see the screensaver, the SETI screensaver on my computer when he was a kid. And now he's in his mid-30s, and all the time I was saying to him, you need to get yourself involved and learn about the blockchain, learn about cryptocurrency. He used to play online poker. And they say, why are you playing online poker? You should be getting involved in cryptocurrency and all that sort of stuff, and instead of online poker communities and etc. And literally about 4 months ago, he turned around to me and said, Dad, I started doing a bit of investigation into cryptocurrency. Now he has got himself a nice little nest egg. But he still has the attitude that I'm going to go out there and buy the coins, and I'm going to buy them when they're high, buy them when they're low, and sell them when they're high. And I've tried to discuss with him the benefits that cryptocurrency and the blockchain can bring to humanity through science coins and etc. But he is still having difficulty understanding that, even though I can sit down and talk to him very deeply about it.
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations where it's clear that the person drones out as soon as you start talking about it, because for some reason it's difficult to grasp. And I say for some reason just because, and I'm sure we all sort of feel this way, that we've just been here for so long. It seems once you know it, it's simple. But when you don't know it, like in the beginning, learning about what the blockchain is and what it could do and what it represents is it's a daunting thing. Like the idea that most middleman entities don't need to exist anymore, it's kind of overwhelming. Like it's a lot. And bringing people on through these science coins, I think, is a very noble, to blow up my own balloon a little bit. It's a little more noble approach, and it's a safer approach because in the end of the day, worst case scenario, you've contributed a bunch of hashing to science, and that's
Correct.
absolute worst case
Correct.
scenario.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we use that example a lot, actually. So that is a perfect example. And to touch base on what you said towards the end there, you are right. I mean, we've all had this challenge since 2013 to where it's just incredibly hard to get people to be interested in the technology because, and I don't think it's necessarily because it's too technical. My thoughts on it are the issue is you're, like you said, you're fundamentally changing the way something in this world works. Like when email came out, I'm sure a lot of the old pioneers who were working on email, I'm sure it was very hard for them to explain to people. But at the end of the day, they basically were able to explain to people that I can send you a message across the world. And that was it. You know, that's effectively what it does, is it's just message passing. It's just way more effective message passing. What we're asking in the crypto space is, like you said, eliminate middlemen, change the way money works, change the way finance works. And people have so many questions about that. And the problem that happens is like the number one question I usually got back in 2014 when I used to talk about it to all my friends and everybody hated me for it was, you know, they would say, well, how do you know that Bitcoin can't be frauded? You know, how do you know that a double spend can't happen? Well, in order to explain how a double spend can happen, you have to get a little bit more technical, and that's when you start to lose them. And the new people, I think they're still getting lost in there to where they don't fully understand how crypto works. All they're seeing is people last year had 3,000% yields, and that's all they care about.
Yeah, the money.
Now there are new people. I do have, you know, a lot of my friends that have been talking to me now that it's starting to take off. They are interested in the technology, and it's been really refreshing to have at least 3 or 4 people that I have gotten interested in the technology for the purposes that I got into it. So that is refreshing. So like you said, that will happen, you know, over time. You know, this is new. This is the first time it's really fully gone mainstream. But eventually people will come around to it, I feel.
Yeah, and
sorry, especially my age range. I said it to Openwords. I'm 63, so I'm a little bit unusual in this space. But the only reason that I ended up interested is because I've been in IT. I was in IT for many years, so it gave me a background that made it a lot easier for me to understand it. I think really the major problem that people have is that they are almost institutionalized in that if they think of money, they think of their credit card, or they think of their card in their wallet, or they think of the dollar bill or the euro in their pocket. And at the end of the day, it's their spending power. And when you talk about cryptocurrency, it's an intangible that is sitting up there in cyberspace as far as they're concerned, and they cannot touch it. They cannot feel it. But then again, that also comes down to the point that really at the end of the day, if they're using a credit card, they really don't have money in their hands, and it is digital anyway. And I think we've got to sort of try and maybe put it across to them that way. And that's the way I try and do it.
Yeah, and it's about the value and the difference between a debt-based value society and a science-based value society. We discussed a little bit in the last podcast, and it's when you go to someone and you ask them what they value, it's never money. It's always something else, but they have to do something that they don't value as much as the thing they truly feel in their heart, they truly value, to make that money. So when you explain to them that, what do you value? Oh, I value science, to use our examples. Well, now you can help build a society that also values science and creates a currency based on that value system, instead of this value system of debt, which is valued by a few people who hold the debt or who distribute debt, essentially. So it's that paradigm shift, and when you approach people that way, they seem a little more open to it because people look at the world through value systems, and the best thing we can do for blockchain adoption is build those value systems up, is to explain to people that that the idle processing potential of their computer is something of value that they can use in a way that supports their actual value system instead of someone else's value system. So this was a great conversation around the value in the around value in blockchains and the whole ecosystem, and how maybe we can help build it, and how we see it evolving over time, and where it even comes from now and where it might come from in the future. So I want to thank all the participants, everyone who spoke, everyone who just sat here and listened and was participating in the chat. I want to remind our audience that if you do not have a mic, you're still welcome to join the conversation through the text chat. Other than that, we're going to wrap it up here. Be sure to join us next week. We have this podcast every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. UTC on the Gridcoin Discord. And if you want to reserve a block, you are more than welcome. You just need to PM me on the Discord server, and we will get things set up for you. So again, thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see you next week.